He's certainly going to have to consider resigning. He's got really two choices. One, he can try to politically ride it out. We've seen that happen in Washington, D.C. Or he can take the tougher choice, which is, I think, look, own every lie that he's made, apologize to everyone and anyone for as long as it takes.
So that was the outgoing Republican Congressman Kevin Brady not holding back about what he thinks about Congressman-elect George Santos, how he should do after his web of lies, what he should do after his web of lies were exposed. It's unbelievable. But, you know, it's still crickets from the House GOP leadership. One day before Santos is set to be sworn into office, scrutiny looming over this. There's a long list of lies. It is intensifying as well as state and federal prosecutors conduct separate investigations here. So joining us now, Maggie Haberman, Errol Lewis, who actually interviewed George Santos. Listen, so as I was off, the only thing that I paid attention to was this story, and this is what everybody is talking about. Good morning to you guys. Happy New Year to you. So my one question is, how did this happen? How did this happen?
We're all used to seeing public officials who shade the truth, lie, and so forth and so on. This is a whole other, dimension. This is a different order of magnitude where he invented almost every single thing about it. I mean, from his name to his, like almost everything, his work life, his education life, his mother's life, his grandparents' life, his immigrant story, on and on and on, all just completely invented. And so it's a little bit unusual to run into somebody like that. And we don't have a system, even the informal parts of our system, media vetting, opposition research, party mechanisms and so forth. We don't really have great mechanisms for trapping or catching something like this because it doesn't happen very often.
At the same time, usually there is one mechanism that will catch something, right? There's the media, there's the rival opponents, there's the national Republicans, and then there's the local Republicans. And I don't think that's getting talked enough about, which is what exactly Republicans, who saw this guy run 2 years ago, what were they aware of? What were they willing to tolerate in the hopes that they could see how far it would go in this climate? And the other thing we've never really seen is silence like this from leadership. And as you see Kevin McCarthy in the middle of his own battle to stay alive in leadership and to become the next speaker, he has been incredibly quiet about this, in part because he needs every vote. There is no reason to believe Santos is not going to get seated. I believe he is going to get seated, and then these investigations will continue.
Constitutionally, he has to.
Right, and so McCarthy, there's no mechanism in the House for getting rid of him. I think that's something that people haven't really understood. And it's going, there can be a law enforcement effort to get rid of him, and I think we're going to see focuses on that. But I can't remember any time where there has been, even a fraction of this, and leadership has been so quiet in either party.
Yeah, some of the quiet is just as you say. It's the Constitution says if you're 25 years old and you've been in the state, you've been in the country as a citizen for 7 years, and you live in the state, that's it. And the House doesn't get to pick and choose who gets to say.
That's right, but there's also just like what's right and what's wrong, and when you speak up when something is just so wrong. He took American tragedies, like 9/11, like the Pulse nightclub shooting, where you were covering, and used them to his benefit to gain sympathy and to get elected. And so I just wonder what you think it says about our culture of lying and accepting lies.
Because in the old days, Poppy, but he would have just, don't you think, reason I said, I'm not going to take office.
There would have been more shame.
Yeah.
What do you think?
I think, it's deep in American culture. You think about a play like The Music Man, right? The con man who comes into town and starts telling everybody what they want to hear. In this case, he's got something for everybody, right? You like pets? Oh, I've got a pet charity. I've saved 3,000 animals, which he hasn't. He says he's this and he's that. And, at one point he says he's the son of a black father. He's just like every piece of voting support that he can pick up, he's making up stories for this community.
He's not a Jew, he's Jewish. Yeah.
Jewish, right.
Which is a Woody Allen joke.
So we should get used to the idea that these creatures exist, these people who will come into town and tell everybody exactly what it is they want to hear, and then we have to figure out. And honestly, look, we have a system that the justice system is cranking up. We've got an attorney general. We've got federal prosecutors all looking into him. The Nassau County District Attorney saying if any laws were broken here, we're going to prosecute it. So it's cranking up a little bit. The media has certainly exposed a lot of the lies. People are coming forward. The truth is known. That's not a small thing, or is becoming known. It's going to have to catch up with the political system. And in about 24 months at the latest,
that's right,
the voters will have a chance to fix it.
Maggie, this culture of lying, is this something obviously something that Trump normalized, right? Because you just say what you want, lie about whatever, and just double, triple, quadruple down, and just refuse to back down. Look, it may work for a lot of people. Usually, just worked for Trump. You think it's going to work for George Santos?
Oh, he's going to be seated, and I think that then we're going to see what happens with these investigations. I think Errol is right to make the point that, lying is not new in American culture, and it's certainly not new in politics, but not to this extent. Yeah, okay. We have never seen, we were talking about this in the green room, I can't think of a precedent for this. I have covered politicians who have lied to me, lied to voters, they've padded their resumes. We've never seen something like this. And, I don't think that you would have seen silence like this as you have in the pre-Trump. I don't think you would have seen this level of sort of just ride it out and see what happens. But everything is about party tribalism now, and that's a lot of what we're seeing.
Can you guys give us, I'm telling you, this is the thing that everybody's talking about. Give us a little bit more time with this segment, because I want to ask you, you are a member, you cover politics in New York.
Yes.
I live out on Long Island, and the leader out on Long Island did this, covered this story. What happened to the local media that it didn't catch all of these lies, or were not interested enough, or I don't know? You tell me.
I've asked that very question. There's at least a paper, I believe, in Oyster Bay that actually did catch some of this and did publish some of it. But the way things work is that it's got to be sort of moved up the chain. I'm based in New York City, Spectrum News. A small piece of this district is in New York City, so we sort of paid some attention to it, Queens. But it wasn't our thing. We said, well, we'll let the newspapers and the folks out in Long Island, they'll have the main piece of it. And, a local paper did, but it didn't get moved up to, say, I don't know, News 12 or whatever the local cable station is. And
News 12.
And then, you have the big network affiliates who are covering the metro area, which is all of New York City, plus a little piece of Long Island. So it wasn't anybody in particular's job, and it was only really after the New York Times focused on it. It just happened to be after the election that you started to get the investigative resources and the sort of the breadth and the reach. And so this is, another chapter in the long-standing tragedy of the collapse or the decline of local news.
It is that, because the reality is that, especially in this sort of attrited news environment, congressional races are rarely treated as top priorities unless they are sort of marquee races. And I think that this is an example of where it just basically fell through the cracks. I don't think it's a great excuse for any of us, but I do think that it is largely a death of local media story.
What does Kevin McCarthy do? What do the Republicans
or whoever
do?
With him? McCarthy continues focusing on Kevin McCarthy and trying to become the speaker. And I really think that's it.
Whoever is speaker has to say something.
They need one vote from George Santos, and they don't need anything else.
Correct.
And then after that, you think they're done with him after?
I think no committees, sit in the corner.
Yeah, that's right.
That's about it.
And try to marginalize him. And then, to your point, in 2 years, we're going to be doing this again. And I think the Democrats will be approaching this race differently. It's very hard to see George Santos surviving a re-election, assuming that he makes it that far. But I think that basically they just try to leave this as a problem that they don't have to deal with.
Dodge the reporters. Geesh. 2 years of running away from reporter questions if he doesn't.
They've gotten pretty good at it.
I
So I think
is it possible for him to hide from reporters?
Santos?
Yeah.
I mean, I think that's going to be the big test over the next couple of days, right?
He won't talk to the New York Times, but he's talked to a whole lot of other people, and it's partly how we found a lot of these.
When he's seated, he's going to be walking in the halls, and they're going to be.
I think it's going to be different when you get the crush of Hill reporters who are on you at that moment. I think that's going to be different.
Yeah, but how do you make? I mean, my name is Trent Wilson, and I'm Jewish from. I mean, how do you? You just make it up. I went to Harvard and I graduated top of my class.
It's a bit of a fantasy.
What was it? It's like the Lovett segment on SNL.
Yes.
John Lovitz, you remember that?
Catch Me If You Can. I mean, there is a degree to which part of the failure in catching this, I think, was that it's inconceivable to me that a candidate like this existed. I think it was probably inconceivable to you. So I think we don't, media outlets still do give candidates, to some extent, benefit of the doubt. Nobody was thinking, you know what, everything here must be not true. So let's go poke at it. So.
Thank you.